Oh, we're going to do a genre flip now. We're going to sci-fi. I'm going to have to use my phone for this one because it actually got sent through to my Kindle. And then I couldn't work out how to put it on my Kindle for PC because I'm a numpty. So we've got our Kindle. Oh, Melissa. Melissa's one of our regulars in chat. She's just messaged me with apologies saying that she can't make it. So Melissa, when you watch this recording back, I love you anyway. You're one of my biggest supporters and I appreciate you so much. Okay. Now we are flipping to... where is it? Kindle. There's my app. Just got to load my Kindle app. Here we go. It's all ready to go. So... There's a helicopter. I feel like this is just suiting the theme because it's like sci-fi military. That's what I thought, Mr. Timony, but... oh god. But when I opened up my Kindle for PC, all my other books were there, like literally every other book that I have, but it just wouldn't download this one. It just said it wasn't there. So it's on my phone. That's the main thing. This is just going to be a bit of a weirder reading, and I'm not 100% sure where... I don't know how big this first chapter is. Oh lordy, it's huge. I may snip it halfway through. Oh, there we go. It's really hard to see on a Kindle how long stuff is. Just finding where I'm gonna... This is intense. Okay, this is a Oh my god. Okay, this is a real genre change. I will put a disclaimer on it right off the bat. There's a lot of swearing. There's some swearing that I saw, so if you're watching this in the living room and you've got any kids with you, maybe just turn it off. So there are adult themes in this next one. And I think we won't do the whole chapter because I think it's a little too large. I will snip it at a natural point halfway through. You can trust me, you guys. So this is going to be half of chapter 1 of The More by Steve Soderquist. I'll make that a little bigger for you guys because it is a cool ass cover. Yeah. Sorry, I think that's awesome. And I've got to remember not to like headbutt this one because, not the phone, the book cover. Because a couple of times I've like accidentally like gone behind it and then watched it back and just been like, 12 episodes. I've done 12 episodes of this and I'm still no good at it. I think there's a fire on one of the islands nearby because they've been doing like water transports over there. So it kind of just sets the scene for what I think this is, which is kind of freaking me out a little bit. Okay. So let's do it. I'll turn off my non-sci-fi music. Okay. Alright, this is chapter 1 of The More by Steve Soderquist. I really hope I'm saying your name right, Steve. I'm very sorry if I'm not. Chapter 1. Sheriff Daniel Morgan met up with his passengers behind the Motel 6 on Route 101. Daniel gestured to the woman, eyeing her up and down as he did so. Angel felt the unease from the man in his prolonged stare before he quickly averted his eyes. She seemed to almost hover behind Joshua, her eyes covered with sunglasses even though it was close to 11 at night. Her hair, long and silvery white, reached almost to her feet and moved in the rustling breeze. Oh lord, that sounds uneasy to manage. Difficult, that's the word. I thought the only thing you were going to bring with you is her, the sheriff stated blankly. Joshua smiled, the gesture not reaching his eyes. If I wanted to bring the congregation from the First Methodist Church off of Pine Lake Road, I would have done that too. He held up a duffel bag. Supplies. What kind of supplies? Sheriff Morgan asked, immediately suspicious. The woman now had a secretive smile on her lips. The sheriff wanted to walk over and smack it off her face, but didn't dare. Something about her was definitely not right. She reminded him of Medusa, who he had read about in a long-ago time that comprised of a limited education, mythological or otherwise. Joshua responded coolly, saying, "The usual I bring along to such fun parties. You know, whips, chains, cans of whipped cream, some famous Nebraska corn. They make great dildos." Sorry, I couldn't say that with a straight face. The strange woman behind Joshua had a smirk on her face. You and me both, love. That's not fucking funny. This is no game. Like it was the first time, right? I was a kid and didn't know no better, came the sullen response. What is being hinted at here? Well, be that as it may, you opened a door and called us to shut it. You're not the first to screw with what you didn't know about. The seed was only the catalyst that started it. I ain't talking about no normal seed, and you damn well know that. Besides, I was a kid and didn't mean it. The helicopter's really freaking me out. I don't know, Sunfire. The sheriff thumbed back to his waiting patrol car. I told you I got the picks and shovels. All you said was you bringing her? Well, at least that's what you said. The disdain in his voice was evident. Joshua shrugged it off, and the woman, Angel, was unfazed. Both she and Joshua had seen this hundreds of times. Some local calls the hotline that has been established 5 years ago to report they saw unusual behaviour in a friend or family, like eating dirt out of a bowl like it was Kellogg's cornflakes. Oh. Then once the cleaner and seeker arrived, they either clammed up, freaked out, or shut down completely, leaving it up to them to find the seed. Ooh, now, yeah, I'm getting with this now. This is cool. What are they doing? I don't know if you can hear it, so I'm probably just acting like a crazy person, but there's a really loud helicopter. Not so long ago, there was no such thing as hotlines posted in every town and every city. In that time, a person could mention the word seed without a repulsed sneer, as if the word fell out of the speaker's mouth like foul gas. Most people never spoke of it, because like anything else of such a horrible nature, people don't talk about what they can't do anything about. Like a homeless bum on a dirty sidewalk with a cup and a sign, it's simply ignored. The sign is read, but no one meets the eyes of the maker of the sign. It brings reality to the situation. I wish I had a pool, Sunfire, that would be amazing. Such as it is with seeds, also known as the moor. The infected always have an earthy smell like they've been working in the garden. Oh my god, that ties into the first reading too well. She was working in a garden, she's got the moor. But also like they may as well live in the garden. What never fails to amaze Joshua is how many people simply coexist with these monsters, who are perfect hosts to the very alien presence residing within. The Illuminist says it's more than apathy, but influence. Joshua has to believe that, because otherwise the term sheep for people would be more accurate than ever suspected. Sorry, the birds are going to scream because they're about to be left on their own, so I may bring them out for my reading, I think, maybe. They will try and chew the book, but it's all good. The sheriff brought Joshua out of his musings. You said she locates him, and you kill him. You told me all this on the phone. Jesus, I wish I never contacted you. Sheriff Daniel Morgan spat on the ground and turned away. He couldn't look at the woman for too long. Something told him madness lay there. Besides, he continued, what good is it anyway to bring extra stuff if it's just more stuff we have to destroy? This was a one-shot deal. You said you and her could locate that fellow in the Commons and take care of this. By Commons, the sheriff was referring to the old county graveyard that sat right between Jamestown and Mulberry, 15 miles past anything else that would pass for civilization. There was a church there as well, or at least something at one time resembled a church, now gutted, but that was it. No one had been to the church in over 20 years. Joshua shook the bag, shaking his head as he did so. This stuff isn't for you or me, Sheriff. It's for her. She finds them, she pulls out what we're looking for after we dig it up, and then the infected human comes back. I kill it and it gets buried again, simple as that. What the fuck do you think we used to get into it, our hands? Joshua took a step forward and Sheriff Morgan took an involuntary step back. I told you when we agreed to check it out that there were no questions to be asked. Now here we are, you standing there with your dumb hick mouth open, just questioning and questioning. We didn't even get a hi, how are you? Nope, just questions. Joshua sighed and looked at the other man like a disappointed father whose son brought home a bad report card. Shame on you, that look said. Now bend over and take it like a man. Oh no. Angel looked up at Joshua with an amused expression on her pale face. She picked up on some of that imagery. He cocked his head as if listening to a signal only he could hear, and paused a moment, then nodded. You're right, he said to her. We have to go now, or there's no point in trying tonight. How many layers did you say? After a moment he nodded again. She can talk in front of me, the sheriff bawled, offended. Sheriff Morgan thought it was bad enough when it, whatever it was, started to stir up problems in his town, like it was doing in the bigger cities without this creepy shit. He was a small-town sheriff and didn't achieve the position by being brilliant, so missed it entirely. The obvious never even crossed his mind, the fact that she communicated without talking. This is, okay, I'm getting like a zombie sci-fi vibe out of this. Joshua noted this and sighed again, Thankfully, he didn't have time to launch into explanations. It was enough that they had found another. Joshua opened the bag and handed the woman something that looked like a stick of wood that had 3 binds of rough twine attached to it. She nodded and took it, then pointed to something else that was lying on top. He took out a small glass of bluish liquid. "What's that?" Sheriff Daniel cried out. "Relax, it's nothing you need to be concerned with. I suggest you stop with the questions right about now. You don't want the answers." Sheriff Daniel Morgan shut up, now wondering if the cure could be worse than the cancer itself. He thought it probably was. But hell, his mummy used to tell him that Satan's own worst enemy was his split-tailed self. Best to leave things that are grown in the dark stay in the dark, because once the light hits it, you know where it is, but it also knows where you are. They piled into the patrol car, an older model Chevrolet that reminded Joshua of times past, when one would see such police cars only in cheesy cop movies or, better yet, television shows from the 70s. Angel sat in the back with her divining rod secure on her lap, as Joshua took the passenger side, marvelling over the speedometer needle and the rest of the dashboard, which glowed with an eerie, diffused green light. The only thing modern was that sheriff's state-of-the-art computer that was bolted to the middle of the console. "We'll get there in about an hour," the sheriff said as he started the engine. This made Angel's eyebrows arch. Arch. Joshua glanced at her as she silently told him that this was the farthest any of them had left their original husk. He contemplated this for a moment, not completely understanding, but accepting of this academic fact. Many of the things that interested the seeker baffled him, and he, being in the role of the mediator, did what most of his kind did, accepting without pursuing the answers any deeper. Some things he felt he didn't need to know. On the way to the cemetery, however, Sheriff Morgan was full of talk. Most of it was ambiguous enough and superficial and therefore not invasive, but still, being the only one capable of answering questions of any kind, Angel, like all seekers, had no vocal cords. Okay. Joshua tired quickly of being the only mouthpiece. Like most cleaners, he was the silent type by nature, preferring to listen and observe rather than facilitate or participate. As far as Joshua was concerned, most of the things he had to say were of little interest to people anyway, except for Angel. For whatever reason, she was continuously fascinated by Joshua, and he with her. They were like 2 astronomers pondering the mysteries that made up their individual universes, circling each other like planets and discovering their commonality with an almost innocent wonder. "Sorry, well, if you could shut them up, that would be great." This was not unusual when it came to the Illuminists. There was something about them that gave their human counterparts a sense of peace and harmony, like the sound of soft music with accompanying ocean waves. Except, of course, for the business at hand, which was as far from peaceful as one could get. His training was to lure and kill the more that had infected a human, and when that time came, to be as ruthless a killer as needed, and without a second's hesitation. It certainly wasn't to play 20 questions without a source. Especially one who probably still thought professional wrestling was real, and that eating at the Waffle House was fine dining. Burn. And that's when I said, "Janie, I gotta call that number on the back of the flyer I saw up in your town's bully. That's our bulletin board, you understand." And she says, "You better be sure, Sheriff. You're getting yourself into some hot water if them creepies come all the way here for nothing." He paused long enough to give Joshua an apologetic look. Joshua, however, was staring straight ahead at the dark road cut only by the patrol car's high beams, his face stony as he waited for them to get to the cemetery and leave this constant litany of babble behind. That wasn't me, Tazor, sorry. Where did I get Tavor from? Angel touched Joshua's mind. It was the equivalent of a tap on the shoulder, which she couldn't have done if she wanted to, as the sheriff's patrol car came complete with bars separating the back seat from the front. Joshua glanced over his shoulder as Angel gave him quick instructions. He nodded and noticed the rod was twitching now. "We're close," Sheriff Morgan said, as if Joshua didn't already know this. "Damn close." God, I hate it how it just gets colder now. Joshua grunted absently without interjecting. It was always thus. The closer they came to a seed carrier, the temperature dropped and would hold at a steady 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 1 mile in any direction. Can someone please do the conversion of 50 degrees Fahrenheit to Celsius so I can have some context? Because I'm lazy. 1 mile in any direction, until the infected came closer, of course. They always did when the host was about to be destroyed. Then it got much, much colder. That was when Joshua would step in to perform his speciality. By then, Angel would have faded into the background to muddle the air with incoherent thoughts and emotions, giving Joshua the advantage for an offensive posture. It's 10 degrees. Okay, thank you. Also, Jarvi, could you wait and take me to the movies on the way to go and fix things? I would have messaged you, but I'm really lazy and you're right there in chat, so... That was very important. If he were in the position of needing to defend himself, his chances of survival would drop below the 10% range. Angel had lost 2 cleaners this way, and had grown rather fond of Joshua. Thank you. They had worked together for over 2 years now, and had done their part to keep the seeds from spreading too far. Joshua glanced over at the sheriff and noticed his hands were gripping the steering wheel tight enough for his knuckles to have gone white. If there were comforting words to say, he didn't know them, and wouldn't have bothered anyway. Daniel Morgan had come across a moor seed 25 years ago. This particular seed was in the shape of a kernel in an ear of corn. A singular kernel so red, it could have been dipped into fresh blood, still shiny and reflective, nestled in the row of other kernels like an abscessed tooth. Oh, this is so creepy. Daniel and his friends had been hired in the midsummer by farmer Larry Whitley to help pick the corn for $5 a day, 8 hours of work a day, or at least until the boys wore out. Whitley was a gruff old man who never bothered having children of his own, let alone a wife. He was too much a fan of the hookers in the city proper to settle down and do what he called plug the meat in the same wrapper for the rest of his life, but he was no bastard either. He still paid the boys $5 even if they only lasted a few hours out in the blistering Nebraska heat. You just saw beepy birds? 10-year-old Daniel usually outlasted his comrades and got to shuck some of the corn for an extra $1 at the end of the day, settling in the relatively cool storage area where the corn was brought in. He had come across the ear of corn with the red seedling and showed Mr. Whitley his unusual find. "Well, Danny, that there is good luck corn," Whitley had said magnanimously, making it up as he went along. "They say corn with a red eye will bring you the best of luck for next year's crop." Daniel, being only 10, bought into this bullshit hook, line, and sinker, nodding at the wise words. Oh my god. Sorry, I've got to stop reading ahead. I always do when stuff starts heating up. I read ahead of it. "Do you eat it?" he had asked. "Yep, but not cooked. Oh no, bad luck then. Yes, sir, indeed." Then he plucked out the red kernel, which for a moment seemed to pulse in indignation at being removed. Daniel would swear later to his friends he saw this, but never told the police about it lest they think he was nutters and send him to what him and his friends called the nut farm, and swallowed the kernel, not bothering to chew it. Daniel watched in a kind of fascination, wondering if there would be some kind of light shining from his eyes or something, when old man Whitley first kept his smile on, then grimaced as his legs buckled, followed by him hitting the ground as if he had been shot. Daniel had sat still for a moment, waiting for him to get up. A small, nervous laugh barked out of him, as it actually seemed comical at the time. The old man had dropped to the ground like a bad guy in one of those cheesy cop movies, or more like, so he thought later, a cartoon from Looney Tunes. His tongue was even sticking out, his eyes were open as if he had seen something that scared him pretty bad. "Mr. Whitley," Daniel nudged him with a toe. It was like nudging cold marble. "Ah, jeez, are you dead or something?" Now his voice was quivering and the tears started to well up in his eyes. Oh, jeez, get up." That was when Whitley spoke. His eyes never changed. His tongue never retracted. And the dank odour that issued from his mouth made Daniel gag and take a stumbling step back. "Thank you." Daniel screamed and ran out of the barn. The swallows that roosted overhead since time out of mind were circling overhead and screaming, some flying blindly into the barn's upper ceiling walls and falling dead to the ground. Oh no! Those that made it out more than pure luck flew until they dropped dead of exhaustion, still screaming in their high-pitched bird song. So that's what happens when someone consumes a seed, I guess. A seed of the moor. Oh, well, that's terrifying, and I'm definitely buying that to read it all in its entirety. It sounds creepy as fuck. I'm totally down. Alright. I'm going to go and collect my birdies. And then we're going to read this. No, never eat red corn. That was creepy. The moment it was like, oh, and then he plucked the kernel free, I was like, no, don't eat that shit. Okay, yeah, don't eat stuff if it looks funny, is the phrase here. Thank you. Yeah, no, that was good. That is currently available for sale. That's up on Amazon at the moment as a Kindle. So, like usual, when this this recording is a recording. I'll chuck all the buy links and timestamps and everything in there so you guys can investigate and buy if you are interested in anything you've heard today. So let me flick over to my other screen. I'll go grab the birdies and we'll...